We now present For the Record.
Republicans vote to oust more than half a dozen Evers appointees, while GOP lawmakers make a case to take partisanship out of the redistricting process.
If we are sincere about nonpartisan redistricting, this is the time that we can do it.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Will Keneally, joining you here from the beautiful state capitol here in Madison. We start this week with an official who Republicans have tried to oust, but who remains at her post. Meagan Wolfe is the state's chief elections official, guiding Wisconsin through recent and important elections, like the state Supreme Court race this April, the gubernatorial race last fall, and the 2020 presidential election. Now, that last election in 2020 has drawn criticism for Republicans, who have voted to reject Wolfe's confirmation earlier this summer. But she remains at her post, arguing that it is not actually up for her confirmation in the state Senate, and that she can remain in place as a holdover. That's subject to an ongoing lawsuit. Joining us now to talk about it is Wisconsin Election Commission Administrator Meagan Wolfe. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to recap a little bit for our viewers. Can you describe just why, in your mind, your Senate confirmation is not properly before the state Senate?
So for me, I mean, this was a big week, and the biggest takeaway from this week is that the lawmakers who have been seeking to remove me admitted in official court filings that I am indeed lawfully holding over in my position. They even went as far as to say that the Senate's attempts to remove me were purely symbolic and had no legal effect. And so I'm certainly glad to hear that legislative leadership agrees that I'm lawfully in my position, but it's unfortunate that it took the Department of Justice having to sue in order for us to get these public admissions of what we all clearly knew all along, which is that I am continuing to be lawfully in my position.
And specific to this lawsuit, I'm curious if the news this week that kind of that admonition that that Senate vote was purely symbolic, does that kind of give more confidence for you to be in this position? Does that give more confidence to Wisconsinites for you to head this agency? And will the lawsuit continue going forward?
So I think what that shows is that this is a political effort by lawmakers to influence elections. And I believed in the position that we took from the start. I serve at the will of my 6-member bipartisan commission, and I'll continue to do so. All 6 of my commissioners have indeed expressed that they have confidence in my ability to do my job. They work closely with me. They've publicly expressed that they believe I do my job well, and they want to see me continue in this position. And so I think that the admissions that the legislature made in their court filing this week, it certainly shows us, what we all knew all along to be true, which is that I am lawfully in my position. But I do think it's really unfortunate, unfair to me, unfair to the people of Wisconsin, that the Senate tried to remove me while at the same time seeming to know full well that what they were doing wasn't lawful. So yes, it is good to have those admissions, but it's also really unfortunate and really unfair that it took this to get those public admissions.
So now you specifically too, you're in a position where you have to maintain monk-like nonpartisanship, but you are also obviously suing the state Senates controlled by Republicans to remain in your post. How do you navigate that, where you have to maintain that nonpartisanship while suing Senate Republicans?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question and a completely fair one. So I serve as the nonpartisan chief election official for the state of Wisconsin. I serve at the will of the bipartisan commission. So I have 3 Republican commissioners, 3 Democratic commissioners. They're all appointed by legislative leadership, and they're the ones that get to decide who the administrator is that carries out their decisions and how they do that. And so for me, if I had given in to political pressures beyond what my commission is telling me what to do, right? Because I need 4 votes of my commission, a bipartisan vote. They give me direction. They tell me if I get to stay in my job. What we're seeing from the legislature is just a purely political attempt to influence me, to bully me as a nonpartisan election official. And seeking clarity in court, the only way that we can do that as a state agency is through our legal counsel, which is Department of Justice. And so I understand the complexities of that, being an office that is overseen by a partisan official as well. But that is our mechanism to get to court to get clarity, because in this instance, we're looking for declaratory judgment, right? We're looking for a declaration from the courts that says, post the state Supreme Court decision in the Prane matter that dealt with holdovers, what do we do? How do we handle that new law that came down from the state Supreme Court? And so that decision is what we need in order for me to get the clarity I need outside of the political process.
So now the state Senate tried to fire you. The state Senate was successful in firing Wisconsin Elections Commissioner Joe Sarneski, largely over his vote over the summer to keep you in your place. We were mentioning, I was talking off air, that you're facing essentially a stretch here where you have deadlines every single day to run state elections now through 2025. How are you just preparing amid all this uncertainty to run a big election coming up here in 2024?
Yeah, that's right. Beginning December 1st of this year is when nomination papers begin to be circulated for next year's elections. And if you look at the election calendar, so the deadlines we have pertaining to the 4 elections that happen in 2024, there is almost not a single day that doesn't have a deadline between December of 2023 and January of 2025. And so all of this has just been an incredible distraction from the really important work that the Commission has to get ready for and to administer next year's elections. And so while I think it's a tremendous loss to lose Commissioner Sarneski and all of his experience in the legislature as a county clerk, I'm also pleased to see that immediately there was a new appointment so that the Commission can continue to do their very important work, which, there really isn't a day to spare. And so I'm hoping, again, that this lawsuit settles quickly and that we won't see any more of these symbolic actions that serve as a distraction.
Wisconsin Election Administrator Megan Wolf, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And when we come back, Republicans in the legislature are putting forward what they're calling the Iowa model of legislative redistricting. We'll speak to an Iowa political scientist about what the map drawing process looks like for our neighbors to the west. We'll be back after this.
This portion of News 3 Now is sponsored by Madison Gas and Electric.
It's A1 Furniture's anniversary sale with up to 44% off store-wide and 44 months free financing. Plus, get tax included on purchases over $9.99. Huge selection and stock now at A1 Furniture.
Madison's locally owned family furniture store.
If you've ever grilled, you know you can count on propane to make everything great. But did you know propane also powers school buses that produce lower emissions that lead to higher test scores? Or that propane can cut your energy costs at home? It powers big jobs and small ones too. From hospitals to hospitality, people rely on propane, an energy source that's affordable, plentiful, and environmentally friendly for everyone. Get the facts at propane.com/now.
There's a reason big dental bills often come as a shock, because sometimes you don't realize what's not covered until you get the bill. That's why affordable dental insurance from Physicians Mutual is important. It can give you benefits that go beyond what you get from more limited coverage plans. Because no one likes a big dental bill, especially if you're retired or on a fixed income. For a free information kit, call or go online now. This isn't some discount plan or preventive-only coverage. This is real dental insurance that helps cover over 350 procedures, like cleanings, fillings, crowns, bridges, root canals, even dentures, at any dentist you want. Dental insurance from Physicians Mutual Insurance Company helps cover preventive care, basic work, and major procedures, with no deductibles and no annual maximum. For your free information kit with all the details, call now or visit sendinfokit.com.
Physicians Mutual, Physicians Mutual.
Don't miss A1 Furniture's anniversary sale. Save up to 44% off name brand mattresses and get 44 months free financing. Plus, get tax included on purchases over $9.99. Huge selection in stock now at A1 Furniture.
Madison's locally owned family furniture store.
Welcome back. This week, the state legislature worked ahead to make sweeping changes to how Wisconsin redraws its legislative districts. The Senate Elections Committee held what is almost certain to be the only public hearing the bill will receive after the Assembly brought the plan straight to the floor last month. Now, Republicans modeled their plan after how Iowa redraws its legislative districts, using nonpartisan legislative lawyers to draw the maps for lawmakers, and then the lawmakers either vote up or down. Joining us now for insight into how the Iowa model came to be is University of Iowa political science professor Tim Hagel, and thanks so much for joining us.
Be with you.
So I first want to ask that general question: what is the origin of this quote-unquote Iowa model?
Well, it's hard to say what the origin is. I didn't look into the detailed history of it, but basically it's a way or a desire to get rid of the politics of the redistricting process. We've seen this, of course, and still see this in many other states where there are large fights over it, and of course court challenges over it, over redistricting, and whether it's gerrymandering or trying to promote one party over another. And that causes a certain amount of dissension among the people in a particular state or district or what have you. And so as a result, this type of process, leaving it, at least the drawing of the plan, leaving it up to a nonpartisan entity, tends to get away from a lot of that partisanship that we often see in this process.
So in Wisconsin here, we're used to really prolonged court battles. Curious what this looks like in Iowa, how long the process takes every 10 years?
It doesn't take all that long usually. Basically, the way the process works is once we get the data from the U.S. Census Bureau in terms of the population and how it's distributed in the various places around the state, that the Legislative Services Agency, which is part of the Iowa government, gets together and they have criteria that they are bound by both in the Iowa Constitution and by statute to consider some things they can consider, some things they can't consider, and they put together a plan. So that's usually the first plan. And then we have what's called a TRAC, a Temporary Redistricting Advisory Committee, that comes together and they basically hold hearings around the state, usually 3 or 4 hearings in different places around the state. And people, meaning voters, can come in and talk about what they think is good or bad about a plan. Then the TRAC issues an opinion, which is given to the state legislature, and the legislature then can vote up or down. And sometimes if they approve the first plan, that basically we're done. And if they don't approve it, then the Legislative Services Agency issues a second plan, and process is a little more streamlined at the second stage, but basically the same idea and potentially a third plan. And all this happens fairly quickly.
One of the distinguishing factors between this kind of Wisconsin model and the Iowa model, legislators actually amended our Wisconsin model so that after 2 successive maps that are presented to them by what would be our Legislative Reference Bureau, that instead of the Iowa model where then lawmakers can start amending that map, Wisconsin has to kind of keep just going back to the LRB to receive new maps. I'm curious to get a better sense of, if the Iowa legislature deadlocks often on these maps, have a sense of how often that happens?
Well, it's not so much that the Iowa legislature will deadlock on them. Again, sometimes they have to basically take an up or down vote on each of the plans based on the feedback they get from the public and from other experts and so forth. And again, as far as drawing the plans is concerned, the Legislative Services Agency, our LSA, we can't consider certain things like the partisanship of the office holders or voters or things of that nature. They have to focus on compactness and population and things of that nature. And so for the legislature, Iowa legislature, it's really an up or down vote for the first 3 plans. And if they can't get things together for the first 2 plans, and if they can't get things together by a certain date, then the Constitution authorizes the Iowa Supreme Court to draw the plan.
One of the big differences in Wisconsin here is that there's no mechanism for us to have our Supreme Court kind of step in and draw those maps. That constitutionally has to be done by the state legislature. I'm curious to get a sense of kind of what this looks like just politically. Are these districts in Iowa a little bit more competitively, a little bit more politically competitive? Do we see a little bit more turnover in the state legislature?
Well, in terms of the competitiveness, that really just depends on the political composition of the various either congressional districts or as you work your way down to the Senate districts and then the House districts. So, for instance, in Northwest Iowa and generally Western Iowa, the counties tend to have much higher proportions of active Republican voters, whereas in certain counties that are more populous, like Polk County, where Des Moines is, or Johnson County, where I'm at with the University of Iowa, Lynn County, where Cedar Rapids is, that they have a higher percentage of Democrats that are the active voters. And so if you draw a district within those areas, they're just not very competitive. So in Johnson County, where Iowa City is, that you have Democrats that represent all of the districts just because of the large number of Democrats in this particular county. Whereas again, in some of the western counties, it's going to be heavily Republican. So in that sense, it doesn't really affect the competitiveness because that's not really a factor that the Legislative Services Agency takes into consideration. On the other hand, in terms of turnover, our process does encourage turnover because one of the things that, again, the LSA can't take into consideration is the residence of the office holders. So unlike some other states where you can gerrymander these things and protect certain people in certain districts, that doesn't happen here. So we often have situations where incumbents are thrown together.
Tim Hagel with the University of Iowa, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So where does this Iowa model bill go from here? There's a chance it could be amended by the Senate committee before heading to the full Senate. Now, Democrats have argued that Republicans are trying to circumvent a lawsuit that's currently before the state Supreme Court with this bill. They've largely asked for additional protections. Governor Evers has indicated he would not support the bill as is. And when we return, more than a dozen Evers appointees were fired by the state Senate this week. We'll sit down with two of them coming up next.
You're the people who make junk disappear?
We brought a whole truckload of magic.
1-800-JUNK, I love you.
We make junk disappear. All you have to do is point.
At Informed Choice Insurance Agency, we're proud of our 5-star reviews.
My agent Matthew explained everything about Medicare and the needed supplemental insurance. He took the time to show me several different plans and the plus and minuses of each policy.
Andrea was amazing, from her knowledge to her presentation to her skills in navigating complicated and intimidating waters. I cannot emphasize enough how much she helped me and my family.
Need help with your Medicare or Marketplace health plans? Get 5-star service at Informed Choice Insurance Agency.
Don't miss Schuster's Farm Fall Harvest, on now through October 30th. Over 60 activities for all ages. Get lost in the corn maze. Enjoy barnyard animals and hay rides. Over 14 acres of pumpkins. Tasty eats and treats with apple cider donuts, homemade pumpkin cake, caramel apples, craft beer and wine. Dare to enter our haunted forest. Schuster's Farm Fall Harvest, just minutes east of Madison and Deerfield. Visit schustersfarm.com for details.
Imagine a world with no drama.
I haven't signed Jody's card yet.
At 4imprint, finding the promotional products you need to create a memorable moment is an easy mission. Our expert team will take care of every detail to make your success a certainty. Take the drama out of ordering promotional products at 4imprint.com.
4imprint, for certain. You're the people who make junk disappear?
We brought a whole truckload of magic.
1-800-JUNK, I love you.
We make junk disappear. All you have to do is point.
It's insanity. It's insanity.
Welcome back. Strong words from the governor this week as the state Senate voted to axe 8 of his appointees to various boards and commissions. The governor had appointed Sharon Adams, Dylan Jennings, Sandra Nass, and Jim Vandenbroek to the Natural Resources Board, which sets policy for the Department of Natural Resources. That board was temporarily unable to do any work until Evers made new appointments. The state Senate also handed a pink slip to Joe Zarneski, who Evers had appointed to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, who spoke with him earlier this week to talk about his ouster and what this means for the WEC heading into a very important presidential election year.
Well, there was a public hearing before the Senate Elections Committee. They basically only asked me, I think 2 questions. The main one being why I abstained from voting on the vote to reappoint Megan Wolf.
What does this mean to now have somebody new come into place, get up to speed as we're staring down 2024 here?
Well, we're months away from a very important election here in the state of Wisconsin. So I think it's important that whoever is reappointed, and the governor has already reappointed someone, be up to speed. It takes a while to learn the ropes, essentially. I was on the commission for, roughly 6 months, and I was just starting to learn how things work.
You occupy a position, or you did occupy a position that's exclusive to former clerks, people that have this kind of firsthand experience with elections. I'm just kind of curious from a broad sense how important it is to have somebody like you with that experience on the WEC.
The statute that created the Wisconsin Elections Commission required that there be two positions, one Democrat and one Republican, was a former either county clerk or municipal clerk, someone who actually ran elections. And I think that's very important. And I know that all of the municipal and county clerks throughout the state feel that that's very, very important to have somebody on the commission who actually has hands-on experience running elections. As Milwaukee County Clerk, I was responsible for overseeing the elections in Milwaukee County. I administered the 2016 presidential recount in Milwaukee County, which was a very educational experience for me. But I think it's vitally important that you have someone who understands what the clerks in this state go through every day when they're administering elections. Wisconsin has, I think, a great system where our election administration is decentralized, where it's run by the local clerks. And those are the people who have the hands-on experience. So I think it's vitally important that we have them on the commission. When the Republicans, rejected all these gubernatorial appointees, I think it's very disappointing because Wisconsin has this great history of citizen boards and commissions overseeing state agencies, a variety of state agencies in Wisconsin government. And having these appointees rejected, I think is going to discourage qualified people willing to volunteer their time to serve the people of the state of Wisconsin in this capacity. So I think that's very disappointing.
That was Joe Zarneski, a former member of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. But he was not alone. Also fired by the Senate this week, Dr. Sheldon Wasserman, who Evers appointed to the Medical Examining Board, Jerry Halverson, who was appointed to the Livestock Sighting Review Board, and Melissa Baldoff, the governor's former deputy chief of staff, who he had appointed to the Council on Domestic Abuse. We also spoke with Baldoff about her removal. Here's what she had to say. And you alluded to this a little bit before, but just kind of getting a sense of, where do you go from here? You said you obviously will continue to be an advocate for some of these issues. What does that leave, the council?
Well, the council is, very fortunate that the governor was able to appoint somebody else to fill my spot immediately. And I know that she is going to be an incredible advocate. She's somebody with a long history of doing this work and as a leader in this work. So the council is going to be in great hands. I'm so glad that I'm going to still get to participate in a way by being involved in the committees. And it's really a critical time. And that to me is really the most upsetting thing about this whole process is as they are taking this vote to, disrupt the council's business and remove me because they don't like me and they don't like what I have to say. We just had a report come out this week from End Abuse Wisconsin that we saw a 20% increase in domestic violence related homicides in Wisconsin. We are the 7th worst state in the nation for domestic abuse homicides. This is a crisis. This is people dying. And the overwhelming majority of these domestic violence related deaths are committed with firearms. These are homicides. These are death by suicides. Overwhelmingly, these are done with firearms. And this is also at a time when Republicans are refusing to fund programs for survivors. There is a tens of millions of dollar deficit in what those organizations need and what they've previously been funded with and what they are going to be getting. The governor has proposed funding these programs. The Republicans are refusing to do it, even though we have a record surplus. We've got the money to do it. So just to have this pettiness going on while we're hearing more and more about this crisis of people dying by guns, they're not funding these programs and they're not taking action on the really important protections that they could put into place, protections that are supported by more than 80% of Wisconsinites when it comes to guns. So that's things like universal background checks, red flag laws that keep guns away from people who are dangerous to themselves and others, closing the boyfriend loophole, and reinstating the 48-hour waiting period to purchase a gun. So, really, instead of telling people we don't like what you have to say on Twitter, they should maybe be focused on some of those things that are going to actually keep people safe and save some lives.
When we come back, a new multi-part investigative series is launching later tonight. We will provide a preview right after this.
No two accidents are the same, so don't let the insurance company treat you just like another number. Call Gruber Law Offices today. We'll give you the attention you need. We've helped tens of thousands of people get the money they deserve. One call, that's all.
This is hopeless. We've been to 5 furniture stores already. The fancy brands are overpriced. The cheap ones are cheap.
What about this sofa?
Seems durable.
It's really comfortable.
Then it's probably overpriced.
Oh my Bob.
When you don't have to compromise on style, quality, or price, there's only one thing to say.
Oh my Bob!
Bob's Discount Furniture.
Are record energy costs putting a squeeze on your fixed or limited incomes? With inflation rising at record levels and incomes not keeping pace, you might be one of tens of thousands of Wisconsin residents who are struggling to survive in the blistering heat of summer or the bitter cold of winter. While you haven't asked for it, the Keep Wisconsin Warm Cool Fund and your local energy assistance providers are here to help. No Wisconsin resident should ever have to face the challenge of living without heat or power or face homelessness. For a hand up, apply today and call 1-800-506-5596. That's 800-506-5596. Or visit www.kwwf.org.
If you've been seriously injured in a car accident, watch out.
The insurance company's job is to do what's best for them, not you.
Don't trust the insurance company after your accident. You can miss out on what you really deserve. Call Gruber Law Offices. One call, that's all.
And finally this morning, we will leave you with a preview of a new News 3 Now investigative series. Earlier this month, a shooting on Madison's east side left 15-year-old Kaisha Miller dead, bringing renewed attention to an apartment building plagued by similar incidents. News 3 Now has looked into the challenges facing the community there and efforts to overcome the violence.
I will not stop working with this community. I'm not giving up on these babies. I don't need another parent to lose a child.
Our coverage starts tonight with Braden Ross looking into how the community is working to identify problems facing the apartment building. Then Monday at 10, Catherine Merck speaks to city officials to see what solutions they are offering. And that does it for us this week. Thanks for joining us here in the beautiful Wisconsin Capitol. Have a great rest of your weekend.
This has been For the Record.